We are recording now, Chair.
Great, thank you. Who's that, Sam? Sorry, Sam.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi,
Okay, hello,
great.
everyone.
Lovely. Okay, so Pryn Handar, good afternoon. Welcome to everybody to the meeting of the Swansea Public Service Board Joint Committee. We'll go to the agenda as is. So warm welcome to you all. Have we had any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have. We've had apologies from Councillor Rob Stewart, Deanne Martin and Martin Evans.
Thank you, Sam. I do have to make you aware that I have to leave dead on 4 p.m. today, which may please some of you because hopefully that means we'll conclude business within an hour. But we do have a very busy agenda, so I might have to hand over to you, Roger, if needed at 4 o'clock. Thank you for that. Okay, so second item on the agenda is...
Sorry, could I just add to the apologies? Mark Brace, who represents me normally, which is why there's been an upward delegation on this occasion. So if we could add his apology, please.
We can certainly, and we don't often see that, Alan, so it's nice to see you. Welcome to the meeting. Okay, so on to item 2 then, which is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Michael? Alan, sorry, again, your hand is still up. Okay, can't see anybody with any interests declared. On to item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. Is everybody happy that they are an accurate record? Kelvin?
I just wanted to mention on accuracy, please, if you don't mind. Under present, fourth one down is myself, but it's Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Authority, not Fire Authority. And on point 18, there's a misspelling of my name. They're only small points, but may as well get it right. They'll
be noted. Thank you for flagging those up. With those amendments taken into consideration, is everybody happy that they're accurate? I can't see any dissent. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Andrea, one thing, also on point 18, the spelling of Councillor Curry's name with a Y, but also says he's Deputy Chair of Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service. This is the authority that he's the Deputy Chair of.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's important to get the detail right. Thank you, Roger. Okay, so without further ado, we'll move on to update on actions from the previous meeting. I'm not aware of any actions from the previous meeting, so that takes us on to public question time. And unless things have changed in the last few hours, I don't believe we have any public questions. Okay, nobody's correcting me on that. So we will then move on to item 6, which are items for discussion. And the first item on the community safety agenda today is Hope in Swansea. And I'd like to give a very warm welcome to you, Tom, from Matt's Cafe. I'm going to hand over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Thank you for inviting us. I just wanted to share a little bit on Hope in Swansea. My hope is that many of you know about it already, and just give a little bit of an update. So Hope in Swansea is an app that we've built at Matthew's House. We've currently got 101 support services approved on there. And ultimately it's a directory, a really simple tool to use in the moment when supporting vulnerable people, whether that's the individual themselves or support workers or volunteers or staff that are supporting vulnerable people. The idea is to create a smooth path between those needing hope and the organisations that can provide it. Why is it needed? Like many of us here, we will support people, and it's not usually one person will come, but it's not usually one vulnerability or difficulty they're going through, but a collection. Hope in Swansea reaches out to 26 different support types. So lots of different support needs are covered in that area. It's free to download, free for anyone to use. There's a balance between professional and personal. And like I said, it could be used by anyone, it could be shared by anyone, and we want to get as many support services on there as possible. So we've got 118 at the moment that are going through the approval process, and 101 of them have completed it, which is great. So we've also, one thing I wanted to share is each of the 26 support sections. So it could be hunger, it could be seeking asylum, it could be abuse, it could be many other things, disabilities or anything like that, well-being and community. Some of those sections have been adopted by forums like this and by networks as well. And we've got a handful of that already. And when I mean adopted, it's more take kind of ownership of that section through the people they're supporting. And that really helps us with getting more people registered and keeping the information accurate. There are similar resources out there, but the difference with Hope in Swansea is it's not just one support type or a directory for a similar bunch of support needs or something like that, but it is a comprehensive collection. But it's also run from the ground up as well. So we have 109 volunteers at Matthew's House, and all of us use it on a weekly basis. So we can check and see if information is current as we continue to use it, but also continue to lead it with our review team as well. So how do services register? It's really simple. hopeinswansea.org.uk. There's a registration area where you create an account, then you log back in, update your details and submit it to review. Once it's been approved the first time, updates are a lot more simpler. There's also an automated system being built in. So it will recognize when a profile hasn't been active for I think it's 3.5 months. That's what it will be. So there will be a notification to say, please log in, check your details and submit for review again if there are any changes. It's been funded by Swansea Council, which has been brilliant, as well as the Children's Society and friends of Matthew's House, people who support us regularly to get it to where it is. Annually, Matthew's House will budget for it, but we will welcome donations from anyone, whether it's people using it through the app itself or organisations that use it as part of their work if they want to support it as well. So we've got a due diligence process and a checklist for every support provider that goes through it. And just to share more confidence in that, we've got a very well-equipped safeguarding team and leadership team, and there's two teams that it's got to go through for the approval process. Endorsement is required, consistency and service longevity is required, and we also seek out professional references for support services. There have been a couple that have failed the approval process, and we have left it with them to work on how to get through it, but we will support people through that as well. We've also got an external professional references, so people who we have identified as professionals in their field. So when a support service comes to us in that area and we are unfamiliar, we have a person or a team to go to for the experience and information we may need. Recent updates to the app currently, so it's been running since September last year. Again, 101 services, that's a lot to approve. We've still quite a few more to get on there. But recent ones is we are able now to filter between what's currently open when you access the app on a map view, as well as through lists of the support services as well. But the latest one is attachments. So you can go on the app. You can find us in the hunger section or the period poverty section, Matthew's House. And in there, you'll see our food crisis poster, which as you click that attachment, you can view it, you can download it, you can screenshot it, you can share it through emails or whatever you want. But it's just to make sure that we've all got access to really key attachments on profiles as well. We've got toolkits, both electronic and like materials as well, posters and leaflets. If anybody would like more information about that, just let us know, friends@matthewshouse.org.uk. We've also got outside the building beautifully painted electric boxes that share a little bit more about Matthew's House and really brighten up our area. And there's another one in Llansamlet as well. So if you're interested in knowing how to get that done, get in touch with us as well. Just a couple of bits of feedback for encouragement, and then I will leave that with you. But a couple of quotes from organisations that are using it. The coordination this year has been a godsend to the new networks. The Hope app has allowed us to have more information than we have ever had before. That's a national homeless charity. We are using the app regularly for young people we are supporting, signposting and also gathering other support services to register on there. That's a young person's charity manager. This is great, so much support on there and so easy to use. We realised we weren't on there and are registering right away. This is such a helpful tool and replaces the many out-of-date directories we struggle to use. It's brilliant, thank you. That's a support worker working against homelessness. The Hope app being such a crucial tool and filling the gap of a real long-term need the city has looked for. And that's a manager in a mental health charity in Swansea as well. So lots of examples, lots of information, lots of great feedback, and it's going really, really well. So if you're not on there, I encourage you to get a support service on that. If you know a support service that should be on there, we really, really encourage you to help them or notify us about them. But also we want to encourage you to use it, share about it, and we want the city to own it as much as we own it too. So that is me, Tom at Matthew's House, Hope in Swansea. Hope that's been helpful.
Thank you very much, Tom. That has certainly been a really useful update and an excellent initiative. And I know there's some fantastic work that you're doing and you're supporting volunteers as well. Any questions for Matt? Trudy?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just one question, an excellent presentation. And as you were speaking, I downloaded the app and I'm absolutely blown away already by the detail that's on there. So it's absolutely fantastic. Just a question for me, because we do an awful lot of work with the vulnerable, supporting the vulnerable, responding to the vulnerable. In terms of that engagement with officers, particularly in Swansea, Neath and Port Talbot, I am going to assume that you're well engaged and you've got the full support of us as an agency. And is there anything more that I can do as the commander for Swansea, Neath, Port Talbot, or indeed, is there a wider request into the PSB that we can do other than, you know, encouraging the use of the app and encouraging organisations to put their details on there?
Absolutely. Don't assume, keep poking for us. The more the areas get poked, the better the results, isn't it? So we spoke to a few inspectors. I can't remember the name, I do apologise, but last week we had an update that they are pushing to get the app approved to be downloaded on every officer's mobile phone. It's a crucial tool that they can use 24/7, whether a night shift, early morning or whatever. We also want some of the police services on there as well. So there's a report a crime that we would love to go on there, and they were just working out how they can get that on there, because I think at the moment it's a QR code, isn't it, that takes you to a form. So there's lots of different things like that, but absolutely please prod the right people. You know, often it's about the individuals, isn't it? So if you can, we would really, really welcome that moves quicker. Yeah.
Yeah, grateful. Thank you. Certainly got my support and I'll follow that through. Thanks very much, Tom.
Thanks, Trudy. And you can see Adam has posted the link in the chat as well, very helpfully. So thank you very much for the update, Tom. Excellent work. Sorry, it was remiss of me at the start of the meeting. I should have welcomed you, Chris. Welcome to Chris Jones, the new Welsh Government representative. Welcome to your first meeting. Thank you. Yeah, sorry I didn't do that earlier. My apologies. So I'm going to hand over now to the fantastic Lynn Sanders from Women's Aid, and Lynn is going to give us an update on the Swan Project. Over to you, Lynn.
Okay, thank you very much for the invite. I just wanted to talk then about the Swan Project, and the Swan Project is for women exploited by the sex industry on the streets, in brothels and online. So the year to date, up until the end of December, we've supported 231 women, the vast majority of whom are women exploited on the streets. So the service is split into two sections. So there's the daytime service. So that has support staff there who offer strength-based, needs-led and trauma-informed support. A high percentage of the women on the streets are users of substances and in the criminal justice system. So engagement can be key in building up trust for them. And we have a flexible approach. The focus is very much on harm reduction. So that is looking at possibly getting them on scripts for their use of substances, accessing housing, income maximisation, and engaging with services all around, really, in a better and more regular way. They visit the brothels once a fortnight, And we also get online workers referred via the Adults Work website, because we're registered on the website as a support service, or referrals through other agencies. That's the daytime service, and women dip in and out of that as and when they need to, very much crisis-led, but working on building that engagement and trust to keep them engaged with the project. So we also have an evening outreach service, and that runs 4 nights a week on High Street. And that is the front door very much into the daytime service. On average, we're seeing between 5 to 8 women a night on that. That offers health and wellbeing support, so food, dignity packs, clothing, contraception, etc. Also, information around COVID and adherence to COVID guidelines. Safety planning, so encouraging the women to buddy each other and making a note of number plates when they're going off in cars with punters. Ugly Mugs Alert, that's a national system that alerts the women regarding dodgy punters, so they're aware and can make informed decisions. We regularly have coming out with us as well, the bloodborne virus nurse, she comes out once a month. We have the sexual health outreach service who comes out once a fortnight doing checks and examinations on the women. And we have Barrod's substance misuse outreach work who comes out once a week with us, talking to engage them with the service, offer needle exchange, etc. Add to that, we also address their crisis needs. So if a woman approaches us and says she doesn't have anywhere to stay that night, or she's just been a victim of a rape or a sexual assault, or she's reporting a crime, then we will offer support in that, take her to the SARC, help her phone the police, etc. And in the last sort of 2 months, women who've overdosed to the administration of naloxone. So it's a very important key service for the women and very much appreciated. Very often the women won't have eaten that day and very much rely on the van for that provision. So the service is very much part of the multi-agency response to women exploited by the sex industry. We work very closely with our partners, so our police, health, probation, housing, and obviously the places like Devodol and Barrod, the substance abuse agencies. We do a lot of sharing of intelligence with the police intelligence unit around organised crime and county lines, violent crime, drug dealing, and what the police consistently cite with us how crucial that information is that they give. It's seen as a vital link for the police. And I think I'm delighted to say that the improved partnership working with South Wales Police has definitely, improved our relationship, but also their understanding of what we actually do and the vulnerability of the women we support. And that has helped to inform their approach to supporting vulnerable people. And I think that's been a real win-win for the project. We're also working with community safety with the development of the, I call it the hub, the community space on High Street, which we hope to use. We hope to be part of that multi-agency initiative there. It's ideally placed for us. For example, possibly sexual health examinations could take place there rather than in the back of a van. It'd be much more comfortable for the women, for example. So looking at sort of assistance that we could do with really is there's a need for the project to be sustainably funded to continue the work. At the moment, it's relying on grant funding and doesn't have any guaranteed statutory funding attached to it. Makes it very difficult to run the project, and obviously some grant applications aren't necessarily successful. I can make the applications, but they aren't necessarily successful. And I think given the how crucial the project is to the women, but also to the Swansea response to women exploited in the sex industry, I'd very much like that to be a consideration to think about how that funding can be sustained. And strategic buy-in is very important as well. At the moment, there's no strategy in place across Swansea and East Talbot in relation to women exploited by the sex industry and what we're looking to achieve as a partnership. I think the difficulty has been that it ties into a lot of agendas, so it fits under modern day slavery, it fits under community safety, it fits under health and housing, and it can sometimes be difficult for that ownership to sit neatly under anybody's particular hat, for want of a better word. And I think it just would be useful if there was some strategy in place so we knew what we were looking to achieve and where we were going. And our model of delivery is based on a delivery delivered in Bristol. And at the moment, there's no agreed model of service delivery either. So looking at forward planning, it would be really useful if we could look at what model we want that service delivery to look like. So, for example, if you look at elsewhere in England, there are evening outreach services, a support service, but sometimes there's a housing first project attached to it. There's a counselling service attached to it. There's initiatives done by the police and health attached to it. And I think it would be really useful. We believe it would be really useful if there could be a discussion around the agreed service model for the future. Hope that wasn't too garbled. Sorry, I do speak quickly sometimes.
No, it was excellent, Lynn, and it's really positive to hear about all the collaborative working and the partnerships. Really positive. The message about longer term funding and a plan is well received. I'm going to open it up for questions or comments. I thought you might, Adam. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Just again, amazing work that's going on across Swansea. By Lynn and the team, and it's always welcome to hear the sort of work that's happening. I think it's more on the strategic buy-in that hopefully there is a way through that. Obviously, we're about to go back and revisit the Safer Swansea partnership strategy for the CSP, and I'd like to see that feature greater presence in the strategy and be more driven through, so that if there was a space, that feels the right space, because it's not just one agenda, it's many different agendas that all come together. And I think if it's sat in the Safer Swansea partnership, I think there's a lot of synergies there that would bring it together. I think the other bit on the funding, it might help, Lynn, to just sort of say what level of funding you'd be looking for to make it sustainable going forward, because it's always difficult in these sort of forums to know whether it's a small amount or a big amount, and what does it go. And as Chris has joined us from Welsh Government, it's always nice to have somebody there that could maybe take it back into the higher echelons of power, and maybe look at how that can be supported. And then the final bit is obviously with Alan being here, and I know he's looking to develop his own community safety focus as part of the strategy for the Police and Crime Commissioner Office. Again, that has a great buy-in with more influence coming into the community safety partnership, and who knows, perhaps we can lever any of the money funding from there also to support this, because it does touch on so many agendas. So I'll park it there, but there's an offer there, Lynn, that we can move more into that community safety space also, certainly for that topic area.
Thank you, Adam. Certainly makes sense. Alan?
Yes, just to pick up on what Adam said, the question of how we revive and reconnect neighbourhood policing in the light of the impact of COVID over the last 2 years, which has been pretty devastating in a variety of different ways, and also a greater engagement with community safety partnership work, is very much at the heart of what the Chief Constable and myself have been talking about over the last few months. That's been at the heart of the last two meetings of my strategic board, and it was at the heart of the presentation we made last week to the Police and Crime panel for South Wales, with the fresh element of the Police and Crime Plan, which is the key document for policing. But it's very much, Adam, about working with each local authority, and I'm absolutely clear that it has to be like that. We work with 7 local authorities, and it has to suit the citizens that you serve and that we serve, and it has to be appropriate. So putting that energy into the community safety partnership, I think, is absolutely the right way to do it. And certainly I would make a firm commitment that our refresh of our work can dovetail with what you've just described.
Thanks, Alan. Jane?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Helen. Yes, I just want to say thank you to Lynn for bringing it and explaining it. So Lynn and I have worked together for a number of years and trying to find a fit for this area of work. So a lot of the time it's come under, we've discussed it under the Vowder SV agenda, but actually it's much, much broader than that, much bigger than that. So really glad it's coming into community safety and it becomes a real focus for a strategy and a service model. The funding, I think Adam asked Lynn how much it is, because it's for what it does. It's not a lot of money. And I think it's around 120,000 annually. It might, yeah. So it is. We're talking quite a small amount of money in the bigger scheme of things. But from the Vowder SV partnerships and funding that comes from Welsh Government there, in terms of service-based needs assessment, there is a recommendation gone in for supporting some of the outreach work that the Swan Project does from us as a region, because it's a regional pot of money that goes into Welsh Government. So I'm sure, Lynn, you know that it's not, obviously we're waiting to hear, but we'll continue to work together to make sure that we don't have any gaps in services and leave vulnerable people out there with nothing or lose really quality workers. I think that is the issue with all of our third sector without that sustainable funding. And that's always our worry, but it's really supportive from my perspective, Lynn, so as you know. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Jane. It is an ongoing challenge. I appreciate that. And very grateful to you, Lynn, for bringing this item here today. My thanks as chair of the board to you and your team, and my thanks to Tom and his team as well for all the great work that you're doing, particularly around the top of High Street. It's been really impactful. So I know we've got Paul Thomas presenting slightly later on the agenda, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that, but thank you very much. Okay, a very warm welcome to Tracy Worth from Probation, who's going to talk to us today about the integrated offender management. So over to you, Tracy.
Prynawn da, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. So yes, my name's Tracy Worth and I am the IOM Programme Manager for HMPPS in Wales. So just wanted to start off and give a quick kind of overview in terms of what IOM is. So IOM stands for Integrated Offender Management, and it means where two key agencies, police and probation, work together collectively with a multitude of other agencies. So that includes in Swansea, for example, Department of Work and Pensions, Dyfodol, mental health services, safeguarding, children's services, some third sector agencies as well. So just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what actually IOM means. So I just wanted to give you some context in relation to kind of why I'm here, why my post is here, because across England and Wales there's been a lot of refresh activity around IOM, and that was due to a HMIP and HMIC FRS, that are the Police and Probation Inspectorate body, concluding early 2020 that IOM had lost its way. So they did a scoping exercise of how IOM was conducted across kind of England and Wales, and it had refocused in some areas. Some regions didn't really have IOM schemes anymore. Some regions were kind of like the police were running it or probation were running it. And what was established through this scoping exercise that it really needed some central direction and leadership. So as a result of that scoping undertaken by the Home Office and Ministry of Justice, they published the Neighbourhood Crime IOM strategy in December 2020, and that redefined the cohorts into the fixed, flex and free. So the fixed is the priority cohort for inclusion that's focused on neighbourhood crime. So neighbourhood crime is defined by robbery, burglary, theft from person, theft of car. And that is to capture those cases that nominals, as we call them, that commit high levels of crime, represent a high risk of reoffending. And the purpose then is to get them onto the IOM scheme. The multitude of agencies work with them effectively, deliver a sequence of interventions, and then aim to address that root cause of offending. So it's a collaborative approach in terms of with the eventual aim then of making communities feel safer. So forms part of the Criminal Justice Task Force that's headed up by the UK government, and there is a overarching objective to achieve a 20% reduction in neighbourhood crime. So IOM is seen as a big part of that. So following on from the publication of the strategy, we then published operational guidance, and that was published in April 2021, and that provides best practice principles for working with this cohort of offenders. So what I wanted to point out was that within Wales, we had a partnership analyst, and they were able to collect data from both police and probation. And that is kind of evidencing any crime trends within the regions. You can kind of focus pan Wales, you can focus on Swansea local authorities. You can also look at the demographics of the nominals. So pan Wales, we currently supervise within IOM just under 650 nominals. The majority of those cases are sitting within the South Wales Police Force area. And the dashboard that's been created can kind of look at age, ethnicity, age range. So there's a various focus on kind of 18 to 25-year-olds. In Wales, we transition all cases from the Youth Offending Service into IOM as well to maintain that multitude of agencies working with that case. So, oh, I can see a hand up. Do you want to come in now, Alan? Oh,
I'm happy to wait till you finish, Tracy.
okay. Yeah, so and it also looks at the needs analysis as well. So that is taken from the assessment that is undertaken by the probation practitioner, which has been a bit of a game changer for us within IOM, really, because now we can focus on an area such as Swansea and identify what the highest needs are within that cohort. So pan Wales, the highest needs are predominantly thinking of behaviour, antisocial kind of associations, and who they spend the time with, substance misuse, namely drugs. And the other issue then is kind of your family relationships. So not only your relationships in terms of personal, but within the family as well. So I just wanted to, I've already referenced about IOM Swansea. So the positive thing about IOM Swansea is that it is co-location, currently moving back into Westgate Street after there was an asbestos, so the probation office was closed for some time, but that is really positive. So all the agencies are sitting around the table discussing those nominals on a daily basis and ensuring intelligence is gathered and any enforcement activities acted upon swiftly. I just wanted to mention as well that there is alignment between IOM refresh activity and Project ARDA. So Project ARDA is a Home Office initiative, and that is set up to address drug misuse. And there's lots of funding and innovative ideas from both IOM and Project ARDA. And lastly, then, I just wanted to touch upon the enhanced pathways for IOM. So the purpose of the IOM refresh activity, yes, is to redefine the cohort and refresh the cohort, but it also fundamentally is to address the root causes of offending. So, and that can be achieved by pathways. So the referrals that we make for housing, for example, substance misuse issues, therapeutic, counselling, mental health provision. So in Wales, we're looking at a Buvadol pilot to run within the South Wales area. We're also running a restorative justice pilot, which is a 4-week programme focusing on enhancing victim empathy within the fixed cohort again. And we've provided police and probation staff with personality disorder training, and that's to enable them to undertake screening and then refer on to the appropriate pathways then. So there's lots of work being undertaken. I'd be really keen to hear any ideas that this board has or any kind of commissioning opportunities that we could possibly discuss today or off this call, of course. So happy to take any questions. Excuse the rambling.
No, it was perfect. Thank you, Tracy. I'll now bring Alan in, and I have a suspicion what Alan might refer to, but over to you, Alan.
Well, a couple of things really. In terms of integrated offender management, the problem with the term is that it's one of those terms of art that indicates what we ought to be doing, but it was never reflected in practice. And the December 2020 reboot that Tracy mentioned was that very unusual thing. It was a position where a UK government minister got it right and gave a reboot, which was actually helpful. Now, The only place it can be helpful, though, is local, because the only place you can manage a cohort of offenders is in the local area. And for nearly 10 years now, I've been trying to find out what is the local cohort of offenders in each of our 7 local authority areas across South Wales, and absolutely failed to get that information from the police or probation or whatever. So I just want to underline the importance of the partnership analyst that Tracy referred to. That was actually something that we pooled money to employ in order to try to make sense of it all. So that has led to the dashboard. And I just want to underline the importance of the dashboard. It's worth having a look at, because the dashboard can be interrogated and provide you with the information of the cohort offenders being managed in an area. So it's not just useful to the police in knowing what they deal with, though it is useful. It's not just useful to probation, although it's useful to probation, but it's also means that you can properly inform the local authority, the partners who sit around the community safety partnership table, because there are 2 elements at the heart of community safety. And I say this because I took through the legislation to establish community safety partnerships, so I can say it with some authority. It's on the one hand to prevent, so that you stop people ever getting into that offending pattern in the first place. But secondly, if they do, to manage that offending and reduce the seriousness and the frequency of offending going forward. So a community safety partnership can't work unless it's managing offenders as part of its obligation. And you can't do that if you don't know what they are. So what Tracy has been reporting on today is absolutely at the heart of enabling us to do things properly in that space, and especially with Adam's reference earlier to, if you like, renewing the way in which we do community safety. That's absolutely crucial information. And the final thing I would say is that in Wales, the policing in Wales and the Welsh Local Government Association have very much put their energy together in creating the Safer Communities Board and the Safer Communities Network, which I think is going to make an enormous difference in giving us the tools to do the job at each local area. So I just wanted to, if you like, come at it at a slightly different angle to Tracy's. I don't think it's a contradiction. I think they're very complementary, but that's why it's not just important to the probation service and to policing. It's actually important to all of us if we are going to create safe, confident communities. And I know we are all trying to do that, but we sometimes struggle because if you haven't got the right information, you can't target the activity that's needed. And then everything from what we were hearing earlier about interventions with people who get drawn into sex working, domestic violence and abuse, all of those things fit with that comprehensive approach, in my view. I'm sorry that's a bit of a rant, Andrea, but you know, it seems to me that everything, and you and I both share a passion of wanting to do things differently on substance misuse and get to the root of some of those problems. It has to set in that overall context of having the right information and being able to do things comprehensively. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And yeah, I was thinking very much along the same lines as you as I was listening to Tracy's presentation. You know, there's a lot of it needs to be joined up, doesn't it, really? You know, that's the important thing. So thank you very much, Tracy. I've got Kelvin with a question, I think.
Yes, thanks very much, Andrea, and thanks very much, Tracy, for that. It was very interesting. I'd just like to ask a question, really. You listed a number of agencies that were involved. I may have missed it, but I didn't hear the magistracy being on that list. And I'm just wondering whether their perspective on this has been taken into account, or whether you see them being outside of this group of agencies.
Sorry, which agency did you say then?
Magistrates, magistracy.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said the magistrate. I was like, oh, the magistrate. Yeah, so HMCTS, there has been engagement at a national level with them. And my direct line manager is also head of the courts within the kind of HMPPS perspective. So we have delivered a IOM refresh presentation to Sentences Liaison, and I attended their meeting last Thursday as well, the South Wales one.
Okay, thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you. Alan?
I just wanted to come back because I think the engagement of the magistracy is a really important element. Absolutely right, and that hasn't always been included in. What is happening in Wales, though, is also, and this has largely come about due to the pandemic, is real engagement between the criminal justice bodies in Wales. They're not devolved themselves, but we operate in a devolved environment. And actually, I've just come off the meeting of the steering group of criminal justice in Wales, which is basically the court service, the probation service, the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, working together to understand how to do things better in the devolved environment. And we're getting real respect from the corridors of Whitehall, because the comment that was made by the former Lord Chancellor was, you do seem to be better at doing things together in Wales. That's quite a nice accolade coming from that environment, and it's true. You know, there's been contact with Welsh Government, work with local government partners. For instance, the reopening of courts in Swansea is no small part due to the engagement of Swansea Council in working with the criminal justice bodies to find an outcome. In this case, the court service primarily. So the background to it is a real respect to the judiciary, which includes the magistracy. The judges are engaged with these discussions. I find it very exciting, and I can be quite boring about it, Councillor. But we are actually trying to address really big issues in a partnership way. Because, as I say, although criminal justice isn't devolved, all the criminal justice agencies, including probation, including the police, recognise that we do our work in a devolved environment, and an awful lot of things can only be successful if you work with the local partners, particularly the local authority.
Thank you both. That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Alan, and thank you, Tracy. Yes, we look forward to continuing the good work with you, and thank you for your presentation today. I'm going to hand over now to Paul Thomas, our Swansea Council, on the Critical Incident Group High Street update. Over to you, Paul. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see some friendly faces around the table. I just want to pick up on the previous conversation, if I may, that I get all that was discussed, but the fundamental problem, having lived and breathed this for a number of years, is actually getting access to the services for those people to have the support they need. So there is a broader discussion. We can talk at length about all of that's going on, and it's no disrespect to Tracy's work, because we're linking with that and we're part of that partnership approach. But if it's a one in, one out, and we can't move the one on, then you're going to get a backlog, and you're going to get people who are in crisis not being able to have that support. So there needs to be a broader discussion and understanding about what those services actually look like and how we can improve access to them. So I've had my little soapbox there as to, because I hear a lot about it. So I just want to put that out there. Picking up on actually what Lynn was talking about, and Tom, I've got to know Tom over a number of years, and I've been very grateful for his guidance and oversight, and he's been an integral part of what we are developing with regard to the space at the top of High Street. But I think picking up on what Lynn's discussed, you've had an opportunity to read the paper, and I don't want to go through that piecemeal. That just highlights some of the really positive outcomes. But I think what we need to do is go back to probably how we challenged the conventional, that we always expected sort of statutory services to lead on these work streams. And what was decided was that actually some of these work streams could have been best placed led by those that know better, and those that actually live and work and breathe and deliver with those that face crisis on a daily basis. So that's why we actually had Barod lead one of the work streams, and in particular Lynn with Women's Aid lead the work streams, because they were best placed to be able to guide us and help us in understanding what we actually needed to do in the broader partnership. And I think that leads it on to a broad partnership approach. What was incredibly successful for us was that it enabled non-statutory commissioned services to have a voice at what I've always called the top table, because at times they've not had that voice, and sometimes it was incredibly important for them to be able to provide some advice and guidance as to how we deal with some of these very difficult situations. So that's why we had the non-statutory services lead the work streams. And I think it actually worked extremely well, because you had that statutory support, but the guidance and the direction of travel was led by those that were best placed to do that. I think what it also enabled us to do, and I think that we banned around the word partnership and how this is the panacea to everything, and how we deal with it. But I think what it did identify and enable us to do was share risk, which is I think is key to any partnership working, is that no organisation should hold the whole risk. And if we can share that risk and be able to put some sort of management in place to reduce that risk, then that has to be a benefit to all. And I think that really highlighted to us that giving people that voice and being able to shape what that support may look like and intervention may look like, it gave us that opportunity. And you know, I'm not going to put words into Lynn's mouth, but through that partnership, that's why we have outreach with the Women's Aid Project. That's why we hope that the development of the community space at the top of High Street will now allow better outreach, better engagement that will be community based. And just to pick up on that, having attended a harm reduction meeting, we are now working through housing, have identified some land where the Wallage can park their outreach bus, so there can actually be 3 clinicians on there that will deal with bloodborne virus testing, but also other clinical need to those actually that have a fear of GPs, don't want to register for a whole host of reasons, who are homeless and are put into temporary accommodation. So we are taking those services to those that need it most. And that was driven very much through the critical incident group and through the needs that were identified for our most vulnerable within Swansea, which unfortunately happen to be in and around the High Street, the upper High Street, and some of our areas where we've got high social and economic deprivation, and the need is greatest. So I definitely think that by sharing that risk, it's improved an understanding. We've cut through then, I think, the sometimes incredibly difficult conversations about funding and who gets the money and who divvies up what and who gets the larger slice. Because I think what it actually enabled us to do was talk about the end user and what their needs were and what the requirements were. And it helped us shape what that delivery could look like. And I think probably one of the key things for us from the critical incident group was the identification of those that were involved in substance use, that couldn't access the services, which was what I go back to, because there were a number of reasons why they couldn't. And through RAPS, it enabled then referrals being made by the Sloan Project to access that immediate support for those that weren't in the criminal justice system, but were at crisis point and needed that intervention and support. So I can't speak highly enough of the Sloan Project and how we've been a small part in enabling to support that, and what they have been able to provide in partnership to enable us to understand a little bit more about what these young people, in particular young women, are facing with regard to that risk and vulnerability. So I'm rather hoping that over the coming weeks, we'll be in a position to offer one of the units for a safe space for that intervention work to be undertaken, with a view then that once confidence is built with those that are being referred, that they may then choose to come back during the day to speak to other services who may provide some support about how they can access benefits, maybe that when they're ready to have an opportunity to consider some form of employment, being it voluntary or paid, but it will enable us to then start providing that better support for those individuals. So the top of High Street, we identified through the critical incident group a number of business units that have been redundant for a significant period of time. We, over the course of 2.5 years, have now got to a point where 3 of those units are now refurbished, they're Wi-Fi enabled, and we've got a number of services that are incredibly keen to work from there. Plus also business startups, that those that may have through COVID started a small business at home and need to take a next step then to understand a little bit more about what does that business support look like, and we can provide that space. And the idea also is to convert the takeaway into a community cafe, which we hope that some form of social enterprise will take on and run for the benefit of that community, because the community space is very much about being community owned, with us as services being able to access that space to provide the support that those may need. So things like pop-up youth clubs in the evening, after school cookery classes for families, because there's a lot of people that are living in poverty there that we can help support through cooking, greening spaces. So there's a huge interest, massive opportunity, and I think that's only come from the critical incident group understanding what that risk was and being able to put in place a program that enabled us to address some of those significant risks. So really what we're saying is that the critical incident group has reached a point where it could and will be stood down, but not to lose sight of the fact that all of this work will continue as business as usual, because it's been recognised that there is a need. We'll address that, and it is reported into the Safer Swansea Partnership on a quarterly basis, because it sits with the priorities that are currently form part of our strategy.
Thank you, Paul. Again, you know, great.
And I think that's about it.
Great examples of some fantastic work that's going on, and my thanks to you and the team. Adam?
Thank you. Yeah, just want to extend my thanks to everyone involved within that critical incident group, because it has been brilliant in terms of how partners have truly come together in order to tackle a very difficult and very complex agenda and agendas across the board. I did just want to draw the board's attention to that this is the closing out report. So the critical incident group was set up as a task and finish group. It was only going to be for 12 months, if you remember at the time. With COVID, it was decided that there was an additional ask of the critical incident group to continue to support across the board. So that has been maintained throughout, but it's right that it does come to an end and become business as usual. With the amount of regeneration, the excellent work that Paul has led on in terms of getting the shop unit restored and back into use, and the partners that have now stepped forward, it makes a natural closure of this particular incident group. But Paul very clearly made sure that it won't be lost. What will happen is it will now transfer onto Safer Swansea. What I would ask the committee, though, is that there should be one more meeting of this group. It should be closed, but one more meeting to go through a lessons learnt approach or lessons identified rather than learned, because we'll identify the lessons, we'll have to learn the lessons to do something different later. But lessons identified to show that learning for future critical incident groups of how this came together, what the good and the bad was as we went through the sort of the 2 years, and that'll help feed in. And I'd suggest that does come back to board just for noting, in terms of if you're looking to set one of these up again in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Adam, and I think that's a helpful suggestion, and I can't see anyone disagreeing with that approach. So again, my thanks to Paul and the team for all the fantastic work, and the partners that are all involved as well. And I note that Mark Wade has put in the chat that the district housing office is also going to be relocated in the remaining 2 units, which will be, again, you know, visibility, create footfall in that area, and have better access to that service as well. In addition to that, we've got some major investment planned in that area in terms of Croft Street high rise, and, you know, the surrounding area, the medium rise to low rise as well, and the homes above shops. So that area is going to see some significant investment, and it's going to be a very different picture and a very different feel to that place once the master planning has been finalised and that work has been completed. So a lot of really good investment and good work going on there. Adam?
Yeah, it was just on that point of the housing office, Andrew. I don't know if Mark can give any timeline of when that's likely to happen. I'm just conscious that the other units are now near completion, and you know, with the cafe coming online, what would be really nice is to see that happen sooner rather than later, so that it doesn't then disrupt the building work that's happening there with the other units. Whether there is a timeline that, you know, the sooner that would be really welcomed. Yeah,
I'll bring Mark in.
Yeah, most definitely, Adam. I agree. The coordination of that is timely. Planning permission is in place now. Procurement processes are going to flow from that. Had an update this morning by coincidence, and we aim to be in and open by the end of August at the latest. So it is happening, and will hopefully, as Councillor Lewis has indicated, with the Cross Street investment, make a big difference to the top of that area. You know, having a daily presence there, and you know, working with partners as well. So exciting times, really.
Thanks, Mark. Given that there are about 3 minutes left, and I think even with the best will in the world, we're not going to let Jane and Amanda conclude their item in 3 minutes. So I am going to hand over to Roger to take the chair. My thanks again for all the excellent work that's going on, and thank you all for your time today. I'm sorry I can't conclude the meeting, but I'm sure we will catch up again very soon, hopefully in person at some point.
And Andrea?
Yes, Kelvin.
Just before you go, you may have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, and apologise if you did, but I just would like to raise the issue that Roger Thomas has been appointed the designate Chief Fire Officer for Mid Wales Fire and Rescue Service, and I think it's probably worthwhile. I don't think we've had a meeting since that appointment was made, so I just think it's worthwhile recording and to give Roger our congratulations on his appointment.
Absolutely, Kelvin, definitely congratulations on behalf of the board to Roger, well deserved. But I note that it's such a fresh appointment. Your tag on your screen hasn't been updated. You're still noted as deputy.
Until April.
Oh, right. OK, then I see. OK. Yeah. Well, congratulations on behalf of the board. Excellent. Well deserved. And with that, my gift to you is I'm going to pass over the chair to you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks for your Take care. Great, thank you, Kelvin. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, my tongue-in-cheek, my career motto has been proceed until apprehended. So still proceeding, yet to be apprehended. So great, thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, we are on to item 7, which is the Swansea Third Sector Compact Agreement Annual Report presentation. I've got down Jane and Amanda to talk to the report. I don't know who it's to lead. Jane, I can see you nodding.
Yeah, Amanda's going to start off, Roger, if that's okay, and I'll come in when Amanda tells me to. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Thank you, everybody. And I'll hand over to Jane at the point where it gets difficult, as usual. So it's been a really interesting meeting for me, because actually I feel like it's been a lot of third sector involvement today. You know, which is you know, brilliant to have Tom, Lynn and others. But I also know that we've got a huge number of third sector supporters in the room. And there's also been a huge number of third sector organisations also mentioned. So it feels really timely to kind of lead into the compact. So very, very briefly, and I will try to be as short as possible. Compacts have been around a while. Swansea was actually the first local authority in Wales to have a compact agreement way back in 1999. And I obviously am aware that there are people in the room who were also involved in that process at the time, who probably have a longer memory than I do, even though I was vaguely involved. Compacts are not unique to local authorities. They exist across other public bodies as well, notably the police and the health board. So I hope I've covered myself there, Alan. But what's really interesting is that Swansea, although there have been, I don't know, ebbs and flows of interest in this area of work over the years, Swansea remains a local authority area that does have a compact agreement, because other areas they've been kind of lost along the way. So I suppose I'm starting with a bigging up Swansea in that context as the first, and also continuing to be committed to that. So they aim to set out basically, I suppose, principles and ways of working across the local authority and the third sector that exists within that local authority area, but also aiming to focus on mutual advantage. So the things that we can do together, and understanding why that's important. And I think the meeting today has really highlighted and given you real living examples of why the relationships are important. So the work kind of comes to life via the Compact Liaison group. And in the Compact Liaison group in Swansea, we have equal membership across the local authority and the third sector. So in terms of the local authority, and correct me, Jane, if I've got this wrong, what we really decided was important was that we needed representation across all local authority departments, rather than the regular touch points, for want of a better word, that the third sector have within their local authority. And that means, in theory, that we have greater advantage, because we are working across perhaps unusual suspects as well as the usual. From a third sector perspective, our reps are elected, so third sector representatives complete an application form which goes out to the third sector as a constituency, for want of any other word that comes to mind right now. And then the third sector elects or selects its representatives. In the past, when we were having events, we actually did that via a hostings process where people set out their case about why they would be the really good person to represent the sector. But more recently, it's been via a third sector approval process, so application and then approval. So the group exists to promote the principles and to work collaboratively on matters of shared interest, so things that we both decide that is a space that we both occupy, and that we can together come up with some solutions. And part of that is to develop a joint work programme. It's really important, particularly from a third sector perspective, that it's a forum for information sharing, so we get early information on, for example, local authority policies, procedures, changes, so it could be anything. But also it's somewhere where people feel it's a safe place to go to be able to troubleshoot where there may be emerging third sector issues, where we would hope that the local authority might be able to assist, or to look again at whatever it's doing that might be, presenting as issues for the third sector. So, as with everything in the whole world, we as a compact group have experienced COVID disruption, but we are and have been now for some time meeting regularly again. I'd like to draw your attention to section 2.3 of the report, which outlines recent areas of work, so over the past few months, the past year, and also the infographic, sorry, I think that is a technical term, isn't it? That is an appendix. And I think section 2.5 also gives a flavour of the work that we've been undertaking, the things that we've been looking at. So and the work plan that you know we have jointly been trying to work on. There's also the infographic that tries to give a flavour of the size, the nature of the sector in Swansea. It's massive underrepresentation. The information is drawn from publicly available sources that are off the back of nationally available sources, so they're not localised. I think in the next year, as part of the work plan, we'd really like to be able to bring to you a better flavour, a much more localised flavour of the size, the scope, you know, what the third sector contributes to our communities in Swansea. But also the group will be working on Swansea Achieving Better Together. And then another key area of work for us is actually building on the pandemic experience and making sure that volunteering is as integral as and valued actually, and delivering as much as it can within our area. I'd like to also draw attention to section 4 of the report. And sorry, I'm trying to follow my own notes here, particularly section 4.1, where there's a description of the local authority in terms of its statutory and philanthropic aims. I think that's really important actually as an underlying principle to the sector, that we are always looking together to look at how the local authority can support the sector in delivering community-based services, and that we're always looking at how we can maximise income to the sector, because the third sector and its income is always really challenging. And so we rely actually on the local authority to help identify new sources of funding, to make those available where it's within the local authority's gift, but also to flag opportunities. So that's a really important bit. But I suppose conversely, I'd like to draw attention to the fact that the sector also is a lever for additional funding into our communities in Swansea. So I think there's an example in section 4.4, and there's the appendix in section 4, which is about the local authority funding sources. But we regularly, as a whole sector, of which there are hundreds of organisations in Swansea, as described, we'd like to be able to drill down a little bit more and make that more real in terms of understanding our sector locally. We have no, you know, we're not able to estimate the additional investment that is brought to Swansea, other than some of the things that we know from some of our organisations. So from an SCVS perspective, I know that we distributed £900,000 of funding to the sector last year, and I know that our funding advice service, so where we support organisations to access additional funding, that our funding advice service recipients of advice, they reported to us on outcomes of their funding bids, and the additional investment from that was 2.7 million, and that's just the stuff that people bother to come back and tell us. So it's really important to understand the combination of the local authority funding, how the local authority can help lever in funding, what the sector brings in itself via funding applications, and then the other grant pots that are available locally, that are administered by local organisations. All of that is invested locally. And so one of the pieces of work is to understand that a little bit better, but we understand, I suppose, the framework that we want to explore a bit more. I am now going to hand over to Jane, because this now gets a little bit more technical in terms of the local authority. So Jane, I'll give you the difficult bit.
Thanks, Amanda. That I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because obviously this is the council's standard reporting around our compact agreement, which I have to say has gone from strength to strength, especially over the past 2 years. The part Amanda makes a really good point about funding. So obviously throughout COVID, we've been recipients for huge amounts of additional money to get out to the communities, especially the grassroots communities that's making a difference to people who are out there. And many of them, as we've heard from Lynn and Tom, we've heard about today. But what happens is that when it comes to us as a local authority, the whole process becomes stilted because we cannot move quickly enough. But what we can do is working with the third sector, is mobilise support at a much quicker and get money out to those grassroots organisations to support communities. And I think when you look at the table in section 4, when you think about that, there was nearly 2 million at the moment. I think that was written just in December, I think, and I think I'm probably going to hit 2.5 million, and are over 300 different organisations supported, right the way down from real small charities where £1,000 makes a huge difference to them and to who they can support in terms of those activities. And it's really about understanding what that tier 0 or low level preventative work that the third sector does helps, and how that helps our statutory organisations as we go on. So it has been a really, really busy year. Really good relationships, I think, between us as a council and the third sector around talking things through, about understanding, so we don't do anything daft and trip ourselves up, but we work together to find solutions. I know Amanda and I very often have conversations. I was like, oh, can you help me? How can we do this? Can I just say, though, I wasn't involved in 1999 in the 31st Compact Agreement because I'm far too young. However, I do recognise that we have come a long way since we've come that. And when we refreshed it in 2018, it was when we did that with the sector. We did it together. So the document we find that we're working to today is it is a co-produced document that we all come up with those shared aims. And the Compact Liaison group is that group that has a very equal split about how we make sure that we abide by those rules that we've set on ourselves to make sure that we are working together properly. The other bits in the report talks about the integrated impact assessment, so how that we work across all of the different quality groups to make sure that we're considering all of those things. And the legal part of that, the report actually says, although it's not a decision-making group, it's really important in terms of how we run our council business in terms of going forward that way. There are lots of things to do, as Amanda says, about we have brought money out to the sector to support them, but we've had some really good examples about how that's been sort of seed funding to get funding from elsewhere in different organisations, and we need to work about how we capture that, so how we really understand the value of the sector. But we review the compact every year. And this year particularly, when I look at it, I think, goodness me, there's no wonder we're all exhausted with all of the bits and pieces going on. But it's about how you can work together to get the support out there, the right place at the right time by the right person, because not necessarily statutory bodies are sometimes not the right person to do that support or provide that support. And it's very much then it becomes a community-led initiative. So really grateful for the third sector and all of the colleagues around the table this afternoon who know me particularly well, and keep talking to us so that we can understand where the gaps are, so things don't fall off a cliff, and that we do something to actually utilise support in a different way, so that we don't lose what's good out there. Is that all right, Chair? I think I shall stop. Okay, any questions, anyone?
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jane. And yeah, for the record, Jane, nobody was ever considering that you'd be you were in the world of work back in 1999. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear.
It's all
very important to me.
Okay, it is a report to note. So before I summarise, I don't know if anybody wants to come in with any comments, observations. I can't see anybody indicating. So yeah, a big thank you to Amanda, Adam. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it was just a bit that Amanda picked up on that we will add to the forward work programme in terms of bringing that greater visibility of the work that's undertaken. I think that's a very good point and essential that does come to the PSB. So we've got that visibility. Again, we have talked a lot today about the third sector. And I think there's a purpose for that, is that one of the things that we've seen more than ever, certainly during COVID, is about how we've all worked together. And I welcome the third sector being really actively involved in both the PSB and the wider work in and around the city and county of Swansea. So thanks, Amanda, for all your work and your continued commitment, and the other third sector partners.
Yeah, just echo that, Adam. I think I don't think any of us, well, probably with the exception of Amanda and Jane, have any full understanding of the scope and the work that goes on in the third sector, and you know, where you pick up certainly the things that I guess that would fall between the cracks and wouldn't be picked up through statutory bodies. You know, we made reference today about vulnerable individuals in terms of, you know, sex workers, the issues in High Street, and then, you know, health and well-being, people who fall outside of primary care, and into social care as well. There's lots and lots of individuals who are picked up in these, and it's fantastic work. Also, some of the precarious nature of third sector work, Amanda, you touched on, and the funding. Clearly, statutory bodies, public bodies are, I wouldn't say in a great place in terms of security and of funding going forward, but I don't think we feel the squeeze that third sector do in terms of that almost hand-to-mouth existence for another, you know, whether the grant will come through and what extent, and, you know, and a very, very competitive marketplace as well, and probably more akin to the private sector, I would suggest, than the public sector in terms of that lack of security in terms of future funding. So, you know, just to bring that to our attention, I think is really, really worthwhile. So I'm going to pick up something at the end of the meeting, which I think may be of interest, Amanda, in terms of perhaps us understanding your world a little bit more. So I'll pick that up with a suggestion I've got, or something that the board may need to look at the end or whatever. Chris, over to you.
Apologies for asking an ignorant question, showing my newness really, but Amanda mentioned that the Health Board has compacts as well. Do they have a similar compact, and how do you ensure then as a local authority you are aligned with theirs?
Yeah, Chris, the health board, our health board area has long had a compact agreement, although we call it the third sector strategic framework in terms of the health board, there are networks that sort of feed in the third sector perspective into that. I probably would need to check when it's due a refresh, because off the top of my head I couldn't tell you, but an awful lot of work does flow out of that, including the thing that's going on at the moment in terms of the health board around the recommissioning and procurement process that's about to start. So yes, a very strong relationship with our local health board. In terms of alignment, I know, Jane, that we reviewed the health board strategic framework at the point where we refreshed the local authority one in 2008. So we were mindful of there needing to be alignment, but I suppose we were more focused on best practice and how both reflected best practice. Is that fair to say, Jane?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the case, Amanda. They're two separate ones, but we do work just to make sure that they're dovetailing and complemented each other. So my equivalent in the health board, we work together to make sure that we do anacos with Amanda, so that it doesn't contradict or do anything mad as we go through things. But yeah, it's a good point though. Many years ago, we did attempt to have a joint one run through the PSB, which I think maybe became too big and lost focus in each of our organisations. But that's what we used to have, which is I think why we reverted back to individual organisations. Well, I can see Alan smiling now, so I'm going to stop.
Great, and no such thing as a silly question, Chris. Appreciate you coming in, and perhaps some of the history is so. Please, if you need some clarity, or if we delve into something or make reference to something that may not be as overt or transparent, then please let us know, and we'll try and desist from that. Alan.
Yes, Chris, if you're interested in this topic, I'll be very happy to run through the history with you. Compacts was something I introduced when I was Minister for the Voluntary Sector in 1997. Jane has just referred to one bit of the history, because actually across England and Wales, the first joint compact was Neath Port Talbot and the then Health Board covering the Neath Port Talbot area. It was highly innovative, very effective. I think the apart from getting into my anecdotage, what I think is really significant is, as was illustrated by today's agenda and the topics we've covered, is that it's in the partnership space, so the PSB, but certainly within the community safety partnership as well, the voluntary sector has an enormously important part to play. And as public bodies, we overlook that at our peril. And it's very important that the voluntary sector is in those partnership spaces. Actually, earlier today, I was at the Partnership Board for Wales, which is primarily local government and Welsh government. And of course, the voluntary sector, the WCVA, in that case, has a place at that table, which is absolutely right. So we have been in the forefront of doing things like this in South Wales, and long may that continue. I think we were the first police force to have a compact with the voluntary sector for similar reasons. It's a damn good tradition to be continuing. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Alan. I hope that it gives you probably more than you'd expected there, Chris, in terms of the history from Alan as well. So,
that's cool. Thank you.
We forget that Alan had various previous lives and he's got a lot of information to bring into this forum. So great, thank you. Okay, the report was for noting. So if we're all happy to move on to agenda item number 8, which is the local wellbeing assessment update and sign off of draft. I assume it's Steve who's going to speak to this report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hi, everyone. So you've got the report there. I'll just run through a couple of points, if I may. I'm conscious of time. Obviously, this update report follows on to previous update reports that we brought during last year mainly, and there was a separate update circulated by email in December, around about the time where the Joint Committee should have been sitting. So just to recap, since the last time this was brought to the committee, work has been ongoing with the editorial group and the Strand leads continuing to work on the assessment. As you all know, there's been quite difficult circumstances to progress this project. Everyone's capacity has been very stretched, and I'm personally very grateful for all the help I've had in bringing this together. So we have managed to get a document together, which has been sort of emailed to this committee for the first time, I think, in late January, and then again early this week. So it isn't in the public domain yet. And as I have outlined in the report, we have been struggling both in terms of overall capacity and around the specifics of translation lead-in times, which we're still wrestling with. I know it's not an uncommon phenomenon these days that everyone has to wrestle with, especially for large documents like this. So we have had to sort of split the task out a little, and I'm in the process now of receiving the pieces, and I'm going to try and apply my I don't know whether it's Welsh language skills, but some sort of skills to piece everything back together sort of in the right order. So that's my task in the near future. So just to go to the key parts of the current timetable then, really. We are looking to sort of open the consultation on the draft document as soon as we possibly can during next week, if everything falls in the right place. We have set aside a period of up to 5 weeks for that. So we have to get the translation practicalities all sorted and work on our communications and put all those little pieces of the jigsaw together as well. So I'll have a busy time in the coming days. Of course, we'll also ask partners to promote this within their organisations and to their relevant networks as well. With partners also being consultees. So the thoughts and observations of anyone with an interest will be welcome during during these 4 to 5 weeks. As I mentioned there, we are aiming to close the consultation on 18th of March, which from the local authorities' point of view in Swansea is the start of our pre-election period, and there are various complications of doing certain things once that date comes into play, as most of you know. So, and to close it at that point as well will also give us a reasonable amount, but probably not enough time to actually consider the feedback we get and do what we can to address those points raised. Because obviously with the Act, we are meant to finalise and publish the document by the 5th of May. The other part I was going to draw attention to is we are undertaking a regional collaboration project with Neath Talbot. It's been funded by the Welsh Government Support Grant for the current year, in which we are trying to bring out the key messages from the assessment into a chapter, a separate chapter. So, you know, we're looking to draw out the key implications and messages from the detail in the assessment and what this means in practical terms for both Neath Talbot and Swansea, and an overall analysis for each locality as well. And also to bring out the sort of key links between topics and dimensions, which I think we've touched upon in the work that we've done so far, but we've probably not gone as far with that integration aspect as we would like. So hopefully that commission will help boost the assessment in that way. And yeah, so the work of the editorial group is going to be continuing on that whilst the consultation is still live. So as ever, I'll be looking for their help and input during that and to help steer that along with our contacts at the university. So I'm looking forward to that. So just to summarise then, really, it's just for the committee to sort of note, you know, the progress in the report, and also fundamentally to approve the draft assessment for consultation purposes as early as I can do during next week. Obviously happy to take any immediate points anybody has to make at this stage, you know, having seen, albeit not perhaps enough time. If anybody has any thoughts on what they've seen so far, I'm more than happy to take them on board or answer any questions, really. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. If I could just bring Adam in first of all.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Steve, for all the work that you've done on this. It was an almost impossible task, made even more difficult with COVID and everything else. It's difficult in a normal year, never mind with the pandemic and the challenges that brought. I think it is a great piece of work that you've brought together for us, and happy to certainly to lead that approval in terms of that draft. There's obviously going to be a further opportunity to feed into that as we go through the consultation, so I wouldn't want it to be held up any longer, because we do need to get it done. I think just for the record, I'd just like to stress my level of disappointment in that, you know, we did ask for an extension to this, and that was flatly refused in terms of any extension, and I just think that that's really short-sighted in terms of coming out of a pandemic, when the well-being will obviously be different looking forwards than it has been over the last few years. And it would have made, for me, perfect sense to have delayed this perhaps 6 months to a year in order to really understand the implications of the pandemic and what the well-being assessment and wider picture would be, to really be able to respond, rather than have a document that for me will be almost out of date when we receive it. And I just think it's really short-sighted by those that we asked for an extension to not have granted it. I think this is almost a tick exercise from their point of view to have it in, whereas we wanted it as a really beneficial well-being assessment that would help guide us for the next few years. So sorry to get on my soapbox for a change, but I think that does need to be said loud and clear, and hope that gets back wholly and squarely to those that need it to be heard. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. I'd just open it up to anybody else who wants to come. Okay, Jane, you need to go. Yeah, thank you very much for your input this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Thanks all. Nice to see you all. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Has anybody else got any observations before I summarise? Chris, you need to go as well. So, okay, thank you very much. If you perhaps consider those comments and to take back as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, all. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay, any other views or observations? I think you scared Welsh Government off there, Adam. So, yeah, I think just in terms of that, and I echo Adam's comments, and equally, I sit on, along with Kelvin, I sit on the Neath Talbot public service boards as well, and we made similar representation there, which was equally fell on deaf ears, which was, again, I think it's disappointing in terms of, in terms of the context and the background that we've been through for 2 years, and for this to have value as a document, I think, some delay whilst we were able to sort of really, make representation and really understand perhaps from how COVID has affected the wellbeing assessment. So rather than do it within the middle of the pandemic, we could do it with some sort of sense of what the new normal looks like coming out of that. So I'd echo Adam's comments there, and it was disappointing to held to statutory deadlines as opposed to any element of flexibility within that. So yeah, okay, we're asked to do two things on page 40, the front of the report, as Steve has said. One is to note the report. So I can't see anybody got any other views on that one, so we will note report as it says, and also then for the committee to approve the draft assessment. So again, I will assume that everybody does, unless you wish to not, and we can have that discussion. But I'll assume that everybody does approve the report going forward. It just leaves me to say a big thank you to Steve and his team. There's an awful lot of work that's gone into this, so we really do appreciate the pulling together. These things don't happen quickly, and a lot of people have put a lot of effort into this, so really appreciate that. And if you could take that back to everybody who's participated in this, Steve, we'd really appreciate it on behalf of the board. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Will do.
Okay, we're on to number 9, which is with Adam, is public engagement discussion, which is a verbal update. Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I'm going to keep this really short. I'm conscious of time, and we're already over the allocated. And I'd like to set the scene probably for the next meeting, or possibly for a work group. One of the things that you'll have noticed from the meeting today, right at the very start, it's public questions. We also have a look down the membership list down the side of who's in attendance. And what we're not seeing as many requests coming in for any information from public. We're not getting any public wanting to sit in and listen. And just going from what we've heard today, there's lots of really good work and information that would be really beneficial for more people to hear. We probably don't do a very good job at promoting what we do as a public service board and the great work that's happening. And so this item was going to be a discussion about how can we raise the profile, what else could we do in terms of the comms around this, how could we get more members of the public interested and involved and engaged in the board, so that again that message can get out loud and clear. So rather than go through that discussion today, what I would ask is that we'll defer this to the next meeting, but put this on early on the agenda for people to have time to think through between now and then any sort of strategies, ideas, suggestions for the next board, so that we can come to it probably more armed with information that we can then deliver perhaps a strategy for engagement moving forward. I'm conscious that within the work streams there's more visibility, but certainly not at board level, and I think we need to address that. So if okay with you, Chair, I know that there's a few any other business, so if I can park it there and just ask people to come back, and happy to have a conversation with anybody in between now and then, if anyone wants to explore that a little bit further with me directly.
Thanks, Adam. I think you make a valid point. You know, it is a public service board, but you know, if I'm honest, I think if we went out and did a straw poll amongst the public, I'm not sure how much feedback we'd have of people actually knowing what goes on, what's discussed, and I think that's, yeah, there's an element of our own failing in that, and I think as a collective failing, I mean, and something that we need to perhaps promote and ensure that we do have, whether it's community leaders or people who are you know, representative of, you know, local communities to come in. In the time I've been on it, I think the terms of public question time, it's been the exception rather than the rule that individuals have come forward and felt that they could raise something in this forum. So, Alan, you had your hand up. I'm not sure. Oh, it's gone down now.
It did. I was just wondering whether to dive in or not. I mean, if we're going to have a further discussion about it, I think we're going to ask the question whether the Public Services Board should be that visible, or should we be so effective that it's the services that people are looking for that are visible and mutually supportive of each other. I think you know, a lot of energy in promoting a public face may or may not be the right place to put our energy, but perhaps that's a discussion for next time.
Yeah, as Adam says, I think we can all cogitate on this now, have some time before the next meeting, and perhaps come back with some ideas, some views, and you know, let's try and move this forward, perhaps in the next meeting, or as an agenda item for discussion and hopefully action in the future. So, okay, thanks, Adam. Okay, we've got the future work programme on next. I don't know if anybody wants to talk to this, but it is on page 43. So our next meeting includes the PSB annual report sign-off, wellbeing and plan engagement and performance framework. And you'll see the items also then on the 16th of June for some election of the chair, review terms of reference, APB annual report and the safest. Adam, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that obviously there's a few points that have been raised today. I won't go over them, but that have come out that will go into the forward work programme. We've also been asked by Welsh Water if they could attend to present, as they wish to do with all PSBs, their drainage and wastewater management plan, because they want to try and work in conjunction with the wellbeing assessment and how they can ensure a community voice in any future planning. So want to try and engage with the PSBs to help with that space. Also for the next one, there will be the scrutiny letter from the early years Live Well and Age Well that will come to the next board. That took place on the 18th of January. Keith Reid was there, and thanks Keith for coming and presenting to that one and answering questions. And both myself was there for the Live Well Age Well. Generally, in terms of that, you'll see the letter next time, but good work across all work streams. Recognise that the PSB wishes to improve the performance framework and conscious that a new draft template has been circulated to Leeds. Acknowledgement that the meetings and information is open to the public and welcome, and encourage that further work is underway that we've just talked about, and noted the achievements in relation to such things as the commitment to Human Rights City, Charter on Climate Change, community safety improvements to the High Street, and focus on the natural resources and specific activities in response to COVID. There'll also be, it was too late in order to get to this meeting, but there'll be an update on the support package for PSBs from Welsh Government. The Finance and Local Government Minister, Rebecca Evans AS, has written to the chair, just thanking for all the good work that's been undertaken for all colleagues across the PSB network. Regular meeting with PSB chairs is to be set up so that there can be more of a link, and that there will be a support package available again for 1 year only of 58,440 across the Western Bay region footprint to help deliver the wellbeing plan. Again, that's in line with what we've done in previous years, but again, the disappointment is it's a 1 year fund. So rather than looking over either the life of the wellbeing plan or even a multiple year supply of funding, which 58,000 won't go far, but grateful that we're at least getting something. The deadline for that to go in for the bid for it is the 28th of February, and Swansea will be leading that bid on behalf of Western Bay region, with partners across the board pulling that all together. But because of the short deadline of the letter and getting it in, it'll have to go without the provision of coming through the PSB for approval. So it'll be delegated authorities ready through to the key partners that we'll try and communicate through to get that signed off by the 28th of Feb. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thanks, Adam. Any questions from Adam in terms of the plan and then the things raised? No, I can't see anybody indicating. Okay, just a couple of bits from me at the end then. Our next meeting is the 7th of April, as we've outlined. I was going to suggest, and perhaps it's a discussion item for the next meeting, was, and it was something that Amanda made reference to. I know Amanda and Jane have left, but perhaps that may extend our knowledge, not only of our third sector working within Swansea, but also other organisations as well. This predates me, and there may be individuals who sit on this now that will recall this when the PSBs were first stood up, where partner agencies did a bit of a show and tell, really, as to extend the knowledge and understanding of their own organisations. They may be timely now, given the churn of individuals. We've had a lot of new faces, people coming in. Happy to do that in part of the fire service in terms of what we do, what we can offer. That may, just sort of get the creative juices going and make links that we probably hadn't made with other organisations. Equally, I'm sure we could do that with almost every organisation. Obviously, perhaps, and given timelines, things opening up now, it may be more timely to do that and give us opportunities to do that. Something to discuss perhaps for the next meeting. Leanne, I don't know if you can put that down as a discussion item against myself, and then we'll just see if people, but in the meantime, got a couple of months to think about whether that's something that people would take on board. My own understanding of say third sector is probably quite limited, and I think there's probably huge opportunities there. We could bring organisations together and perhaps see opportunities there, in the future. So that was the first one for me. The second one was you'd be aware that current Chief Chris Davis doesn't take an active part in PSBs. He's delegated that to directors. I'm going to sort of buck the trend, really. I'm hoping to stay on at Swansea and at Neath Talbot, and I would like to continue the work going forward. So it's something I do believe in passionately, and I don't want to step away from. So for continuity, that's something I will want to take forward in my new role as well. So unless you all shut me down and vote me off now. So.
No, that's great, Roger. Fully support you staying on board. Well done.
Thank you very much. Okay, in which case, just leaves me to say a big thank you. Thank you to those individuals who've pulled the agenda together today and those contributors in terms of agenda items. And stay safe. Hopefully, we'll continue our move to back to a new normal in the next couple of months. We'll see you all on the 7th of April. Thanks very much indeed. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.